Good afternoon, Rachel Vaughan. Welcome to Straight to the Source.
Oh, it's good to be here, Tim. Thanks for asking me on.
Yeah, it's amazing to have you on. And, you know, we, for whatever reason, the divine just seems to put us in the same places at similar times and at similar events. And I can't say I've ever really sat down and like just, had dinner and shot the breeze with you before. So I'm looking forward to today because we're showing up in all these places and we haven't had the chance to really sit down and like deeply get into each other's world. So I feel kind of blessed to have this opportunity today to get to know you at a deeper level and share that with other people. Obviously you bring a lot of love to what you do. And, we were blessed enough to be on your podcast, which was a beautiful gift, and to meet Billy
Yeah.
through you has been a beautiful gift, and you're doing great things. So I want to open it up to you, and just so you can share about what's really important right now for you, how you're expressing in the world, what your important projects are.
Well, I mean, the main project at the moment is Lay Love Down, which is a movement to encourage people to get out into the ley lines because they have been co-opted for a very long time, probably millennia, with these piezoelectric structures placed within the natural earth energy lines to force them into, again, an inverted frequency, which is what the dark tends to do, which is not healthful for the earth. It's not healthful for people who live in those areas. It's not healthful for plants or animals. And you can see this because plants avoid ley lines. They don't like to grow within them. You see them all twisted and a lot of the time that's partly respect, I think, because plants have consciousness. There's been a lot of studies on that, and partly because the frequency is uncomfortable. So that's my main passion, and I'm speaking about that specifically because I know that you do a lot of healing work, you do a lot of sound work, you and your partner. So I think that's, and that's why we had you on our knowledge transfer session, because you've got so much to give. My other work is, because I was brought up in a very dark system. I was basically brought up in the rabbit hole that people are now finally, working their way down into through the Epstein files. And let's hope people also find their way back out again, because this is all very, very dark information. It's bringing down the collective consciousness, unfortunately. Important to come out, but people need to keep their frequency high. I have an understanding that we have organized religion and all of these other elements that take away people's ability to use their pineal gland, which was God given, to do what Jesus Christ did, which was to be psychic, to be a prophet, to use your psychic ability for protection, and to use energetic techniques. So that's what I teach in my courses. So they're the two things that I'm truly passionate about. I'm also passionate about protecting children. I just posted about, new AI thing that's coming into South Australia, into every school. So, vigilance is really important, especially at the moment, because they're still trying. I think that they're losing, but they're still trying to control, particularly through the children. Exactly what the Second World War regime was doing, getting children to dob on parents, that sort of thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot. There's a lot of stuff that's going on at the moment. It's a lot to try and keep an eye on it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that. I really love the correlation between Yeshua and who we call Jesus and modern religion, and really the spirituality, which is what people like you and I lean into, which is that connection to source and that reflection of God that we are, and bringing that love and that light, which is exactly what he did. Somehow his words got so twisted away from that truth that people forget and don't even know that when they're talking to God, they're talking to themselves.
Yes,
You know what I mean? And
it's incredible brainwashing. So I posted recently, the fact that Jesus Christ was a prophet. He was an alchemist.
mm,
People don't understand. To turn water into wine is alchemy. But the brainwashing
yeah,
is, oh no, he's not that. He didn't do that. And I mentioned sorcery because healing is a form of sorcery. Pharmakia
yeah,
is sorcery. Pharmacy work, drugging people is
yeah,
sorcery. But people just
yes,
nuts. And I'm just
yeah,
pointing out the obvious. And he said to follow in his footsteps. So, again,
yeah.
organized religion has a lot to answer for.
They have a lot to answer for. And I think the thing that's been really interesting, even on our own journey, is just to acknowledge that there's two timelines. There's only two energy realms. There's love and there's fear. And that's it. There's love and fear. And control is always driven by fear. Like underneath control, you will always find fear. right? So, which is interesting as somebody who used to be a control freak and also used to be driven heavily by fear at like, oh, yes, that makes total sense. And so, so much of the control mechanism of religion is pushed and founded on that fear. You're born in sin. Like you need to have an external force to save you because you're just a sinner. You're this innately bad kind of person, and it's totally the polarity of the truth,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah. Well, how can a newborn baby be born of sin? And that's exactly right. So you start off with this, oh my God, I'm a sinner and I have to atone to get to heaven. And drag all these other people in. You look at the JWs, they've got to turn at least 13 people in their direction, otherwise they won't go to heaven. And it's a recruiting drive. Yeah. So I mean, I have
Yeah.
a lot of love for people who are in those organized religious circles, because a lot of them are really good people, really loving, beautiful people. And that's their way of coping. And I totally understand it, but I just see it as a form of brainwashing. Yeah. And particularly working in the psychic field, people just lose it because of the brainwashing. They really believe that it's evil to use the pineal gland that we were given by God.
Yeah, which, as you say, was exactly what Yeshua was doing, and what they actually kind of idolize about his work was the reflection and use of that. But then it's been skewed so much they demonize exactly what they're actually idolizing him for, which is then putting him on a pedestal and then making themselves lesser than. And this whole cycle of like, subservience continues, and that's got us into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, yeah. And I just thank God for people like you, because obviously you didn't, well, I'm assuming you didn't come up, through the sort of life that I did as a child, and a lot of people will turn away because they're frightened because it's just too much. But you're coming from a point of view of, you've got this beautiful family, and you share your healing ability, and you gift that to people. And that is profound, especially when you've got such a beautiful love story between yourself and Elise. I mean, that is just, I loved that about connecting with you guys the first time I saw you on stage at Uluru. Just such a beautiful story.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's interesting because I'm just in the final throes of writing my second book, and a lot of it, what I've just been writing about has been how much failure and loss is in my life.
Wow.
But that's kind of the unseen. That's like, and it's in my lineage, right? But it's literally this channeling of how being led so far from the light, going so deep into the darkness, literally burning everything to the ground. I am the alchemist. I'm here to embody the alchemist because my life is like a pile of ashes up until this point in many ways, and my ancestors the same. And it's like I'm creating light where there seemingly is only dark, and like that just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like where there's only been failure, I am now having the opportunity to create success. It's alchemy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's creating light where in the dark. How do you do that? You can only do that if you're a reflection of God,
Yeah.
which we are. And so I love what you're saying, and I really appreciate that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into your story, which, as you say, has lots of dark elements, and mine does too, and I think in different ways. So I feel like it'll be interesting to feel the resonance and celebrate that, because, being led so far and going through these horrible situations, it's such a fertile ground for stepping into being the polarity of that and being the light but having to go through that is almost the training ground for people like you and I to break beyond, to that phoenix out of the ashes, So let's find out about your phoenixing out of ashes, if you don't mind.
Well,
So
oh, sorry. For those who don't know me, I mean,
I was going to let,
basically, I grew
okay,
up
please.
in a cult, in a satanic cult. So my father was an ASIO operative, which is the Australian version of CIA or MI6 or Mossad. He was a telecommunications officer, and his job was to listen in on people's phone calls. That's what he did. And he'd get caught up in the middle of the night, and he'd be racing off in the car to go down to the Glenunga Exchange and listen to someone's phone call. And he called himself a spy. I mean, he was quite obvious about it. He was in the Navy Reserves. I cannot get his serial number, even after he died, which under FOI, because I'm his daughter, I should be able to get. So those in the know explained to me that he must be an ASIO operative. Fascinatingly, his father was also a telecommunications officer who survived 2 wars. And there's telecommunications officers all over our family line, like married into as well. So, it's an interesting family. What he was involved in, because he was a telecommunications officer, he had all of the telecom tunnel maps. He knew where all the tunnels were. In fact, he bought a property on Macklin Street in Edwardstown, South Australia, which already had an old brick kiln that was converted to a World War II telecommunications bunker with an addition of concrete in 1938 during the mandate. Everybody had to have a tunnel trench or bunker in the backyard. In South Australia, it is totally undercut with tunnels. Those tunnels led to water tunnels. They led to other tunnels that went all the way to a nearby boys' home. I was trafficked through those tunnels. A lot of those boys, sadly, were also trafficked through those tunnels. 106 boys went missing from that Glandore boys' home. There were businesses in between which were involved with, covering up what was going on. We have we have the media, police, geological, the museum people, museological elite, the academics in universities, medical schools, all involved in some really dark stuff in South Australia, including experimentation, which I was also subjected to medical experimentation. I've got medical reports to prove that. And I was compensated in 2024 for some of the abuse that my father perpetrated against me because my medical documentation is so extensive, they couldn't not pay me. But it took 5 years and 20 years altogether to actually have that come through. Sorry, 18 years at that point of, making allegations. I've got siblings who've also made allegations against our father. I didn't get compensated until after he died. So it's very interesting how these people will protect one another, and I'm sure under some sort of form of national security, he had impunity from prosecution and was allowed to do the things that he was doing. And he's involved with some really high-profile cases, including the Beaumont children. He's been named in countless mainstream news articles with regards to his relationship with those poor children. He even admitted he knew what happened to them on camera, and that's been published since he died. 3 great friends who are all now convicted pedophiles. One's been convicted 3 times. One's doing 18 years. And one was a chief inspector of police who abused me. One abused my brother, and my brother had him locked up. And that was also the co-accused in the Beaumont children disappearance. There are other children, high-profile children, that my father was involved with. We were very friendly with the Kelvins. Richard Kelvin went missing. He was working at my father's sister's childcare centre at the time he went missing. But none of this has been correlated. And I witnessed his abuse. I witnessed Louise Bell's abuse. My siblings saw the Beaumont children deceased in the bed of a car. My father admitted that occurred on camera. Nothing. Crickets, because we know that there are remains on 2 properties and nobody's looking into it. So it's very, very dark. It involves so many different things. There was movies being made. It's and there's darker stuff, but I won't mention that specifically for your audience because it's probably already a bit too much already for them.
Yeah. But the truth needs to find its way to the light,
Yeah.
and the truth will find its way to the light. And so I appreciate the vigor, the boldness, and the commitment to allowing that light to come through the truth that you bring. Because obviously, in doing so, you obviously open yourself up to considerable risk as well,
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I did an interview recently, and one of the comments was, I don't trust her because she's still alive. Well, that's just charming. So we're supposed to all die so that people can trust us. And seriously, people don't understand that when you go through these sorts of the ritualistic abuse as well, when you go through those things, you eventually learn how to protect yourself energetically. And that's what one of those factors is how I teach people to protect themselves energetically, because terrifying as it may be, people can cast spells. That does happen. People don't really understand what's really going on. And because, again, people are divorced from their psychic abilities, and there's not shamans, these wise people that used to be the spokespeople. They used to be the people that are in power. They used to be the ones in the communities that people would go to with an issue. The wisdom would come through. They would walk off and things would be sorted out. We don't have that. We have people working in fear constantly, and you can't think rationally in that state. So if we had all remained connected with our spirituality, our true connection, we wouldn't have the situation that we have now. And I think that's why I want to arm people with this information, because if we just ignore energetic protection, we're like sitting ducks. And I don't want to frighten people, but in my situation, I must do this. I must protect myself, because believe me, there are attacks. It's constant.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. And I think, I know some friends of mine at the moment are going through like huge next level spiritual awakenings, and how sensitively open you are is quite wild when you come out of, spending a life in, addictions and distractions and all the things that the sensitive ones cope with. So, it can be overwhelming just with the collective energy when you start to open up sensitively, back to the truth of your, connection to source. So I think it's really important what you're talking about, and a lot of people can be very heavily impacted to the point of, almost near-death experiences.
Yeah, which is why it's so important what you're
Like,
doing. Energetic protection can be as simple as playing beautiful music, having sound bowls,
yeah,
priming those sound bowls on a daily basis, 432 hertz, 528 hertz. There's probably a whole bunch of more that you know than I do. And that is anathema to dark entities. They can't stand it. It sloughs off negative energy, and it helps repair the auric shield, which gets, again, broken down with negative thoughts, negative stress, EMFs, man-made EMFs. Yeah, those sorts of things can really break it down.
yeah, yep, yeah. It's so true, and it's quite simple. It's very simple. You know, making whether you're creating it or listening to it has a profound impact, which then all of that also impacts your well-being, your physical vessel, your emotional and mental state, your spiritual connection. Like, it's wild. It's really amazing. So needless to say, growing up in your world was distorted, tumultuous, like, wow. How many siblings did you have in your family?
I was the youngest of six. My father had three children with a wife. Whilst he was still married to her, he plucked my mother out of her family. She was only 20, he was 36. She had no idea he was married and had three children. So then she had three
Yeah,
children with him, and I'm the third of those. And then another son appeared out of nowhere who was sired a couple of streets away from where I grew up. My father had another relationship that was hidden from everybody until 2012, and Carl James came forward at that time. And it links another of my father's victims to our family, which is the Somerton Man case. So there are so many cases that my father was involved in. So 7 that we know of.
yeah. Well, how would you have described yourself, like, growing up? Like, obviously these huge situations, these incredibly challenging experiences must have shaped you as a young child and through into, a teenager and whatnot. What was Rachel like back in those times when this was very real a part of your life?
Well, I managed to cope in school, but I was not very good with authority. So there were some teachers that I was actually pretty nasty to, actually, and I feel quite guilty about that, because I couldn't do that at home. When I was at home,
Yeah,
I would spend a lot of time either in my bedroom or out in the garden, sort of hiding in a tree, or in spaces where I knew my father couldn't find me when he got home from work. It's usually about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I've spent a lot of time with animals because I felt safe with animals. I did have some beautiful friends, and I used to spend time at their houses. But because of what I was used to, I would be absolutely beside myself with worry that something was going to happen to my mother, because it was constantly threatening her to keep me quiet. So I didn't, I found it difficult to relax even when I was away from home. And of course, I'd worry about my pets too, because I'd come back and they'd either be taken away or they'd be dead, or, yeah. So most of the time, I
yeah,
probably came across as reasonably together. Once I got into the teen years, when my mother left home and left me with my father, that was a nightmare. And I don't blame her, because he had his first wife taken out. So this was to save her own life. That was a nightmare. So I didn't cope then. I wasn't coping socially at school. I pretty much did my own thing for at least a 6-month period. I hid in a very large denim jacket that I was given by a particular individual, because I believe at that time I was pregnant. at about 13, 14. I didn't want my friends to know. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that would have been, probably your mother was, the one thing that you could kind of lean towards each other and have the commonality of surviving your father, but losing that kind of one stable part of anything there must have been like super confronting.
Yeah, that broke me. I was suicidal from that point. Not anymore. And it's interesting because the suicidal ideation didn't end until she came back from she went and lived on an island for a while, which also made it very difficult to visit. So when she came back, the suicidal ideation went away. So that's often part of a program with people who've gone through that sort of really severe trauma, is if you're abandoned, you take yourself out. I never actually did anything towards it, thankfully, but that's very, very common.
Yeah. Yeah, what a blessing, I mean, knowing what we know now, it transforms all of those kind of thought processes, but at the time they're very real. And not wanting to be a part of life on this planet, especially in those torturous experiences and years, often in your teens, early or late teens. I've had my own very like version of that, of just not wanting to be around anymore. And it's very all encompassing, it's very hard to find a way through that. But I think somehow, thankfully, we did. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here talking. So, yeah. So, how would you describe yourself as a young adult, surviving through school? At what point did you get away from your father? Were you able to kind of forge a different path for you?
Yeah, so I drove him from the house at one point. So some of the things that I was taught through the cult, I used against him. So I had probably about 6 months to a year of him barely being at the house. But the whole house was haunted, so that was also very scary. I hid in my bedroom then. I used to push a cupboard up against my bedroom door because there were tunnels that would make the house accessible to anybody who wanted to come in. So that was also very, very difficult, but at least he wasn't there. And then eventually I managed to leave home, go and live with my mother at 16. She then went to live on the island when I was 17. So, at that point, I went into university, even though I had no reason to be able to get into the course that I did. My father made phone calls, and I've published my transcripts to prove that I had no right to get into that Bachelor of Science. When I realised that they wanted me to go into psychology for their own benefits, my father and his great mate, I withdrew, didn't tell them. Then I was basically mentored into the public service. And that was a good income, but because of my trauma, I found it very difficult. I was socially totally inept, struggled terribly. So eventually I got out of that, went into art school, and that was where my healing started. I loved art. I'd always been, able to do it quite easily. So that was, and, some of the things that I produced at that time were a very strong indicator of the trauma that I'd been through. So the artworks I was producing, painfully obvious what I've been through. I also in year 12, the artworks I was producing were clearly indicating what I'd been through. And there was a psychologist who was in the family who was studying me and involved herself in my special study in year 12. Yeah.
Yeah, I think art's very therapeutic, but it's also like very expressive. It's a way that we can get that, what's really going on in the internal realm out, which can be like when you've had very dark situations. I'm sure, what would you describe your artwork as like at that point?
Really creepy. So one special year 12 art project was a great big hand with a cutout in the center and an eye looking through. Now, I had no idea that that was a protection from the evil eye. It's actually what people have a pendant with the hand with the eye in the center. I didn't know those things. And we're going back to the early 90s. I was looking up that sort of thing either. I just unintentionally, organically produced this artwork. Um, and in the reflection in the pupil of that eye was me at my worst, in my greatest traumatic state, how I would sit when I was stuffed into a tunnel, an adjunct tunnel as a small child, and obviously, nobody's paying attention to those sorts of things. There was another artwork that I produced, which was like a triffid crawling out of a test tube, because I had been told by my father as a small child that I was a baby, and I was born in 73. The first public IVF baby was born in 79. So no doubt they were doing it earlier, and this is what he told me. Whether or not it's true, I don't know, but my mother couldn't conceive, and she only had one fallopian tube and one ovary because it had been stolen surgically, and she only found that out when she had a hysterectomy. She has no idea when it was taken. So who knows how many siblings I have out there. So that rings true. It's a possibility that that is the case, and this was reflected in my artwork. And my artwork was about transhumanist agenda. It was about splicing of humans with plants or other entities and them getting out into nature and wreaking havoc. So when I went into art school as an adult, my artwork was baby heads. I was doing clay, and I took a cast off a doll's face, and a lot of my artwork had these babies' heads, and I had witnessed horrific rituals involving babies. So it was a cry for help again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A manifestation in the real world of horrific and unspoken elements. And I guess, I think a lot of people would struggle too. A lot of people would struggle to accept what you say because it shakes the foundations of it's a safe world, and these things wouldn't happen. And again, that deep indoctrination that people have away from, hang on a second, like there's a lot of things that are very different to what you believe that are going on.
Oh, yeah. And people are finally realizing this with the Epstein file release, which is very, 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 very distressing for a lot of people. But unfortunately, this is how the world is run. It's run through blackmail operations using children and worse. That's almost the vanilla of it, what happens to little children as far as the, sexual connotations are concerned. The other stuff's even worse. So, I think people
Yeah.
are getting a bit of a taste now, but it's not going to get better. The information's only going to get darker. But the idea is being aware of it means it's very hard for it to continue. If everybody knew this stuff was going on, we'd all be vigilant. And I think we're going to go to a point where we're going to live back in communities where we've got shamans who are, elected from the people to be that wise voice to help people. I think that's what we're going back to, because this system does not
Yeah.
work. It certainly doesn't protect children. It does the absolute opposite.
Yeah, it does the exact opposite with not just children, but, for want of a better word, Indigenous, the truth keepers, like it, yeah. They've done a very good job of trying to steal the voice of love and nature.
Yes.
Um,
Absolutely, yeah. And when you look at how Indigenous peoples have been decimated across the entire world, and in Australia, it's shocking what's been done, horrific. And they took children away so that they could assimilate them or, experiment on them. Part of that is also because these people were that they were the conservators of the earth. They knew about ley lines, they knew about protection, they knew about balancing. And the Freemasons
yes.
couldn't have that because they were working in the opposite direction. So that's a big reason why they were attacked. It wasn't just a land grab. And
Yeah.
got, there's evidence in mainstream articles. The Guardian, the Room of the Dead article, talks about how original Australians were hunted down to be used as specimens and sold off to museums across the world. Some of our most prominent South Australians were involved. And they're the ones that have towns named after them. And conservation parks, it's just a horror show.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to answer for that's going to be balanced by the divine. We all get to face off with the polarity of the deeds that we do, or whether they're perceived negative or positive. And I feel like we're at this point. We're at this point where the truth is screaming to be told, and we're bringing that voice back for love and for nature. And I feel like that's why I feel so excited to look around and see the rainbow tribe, to look in the world and see, oh wow, we're in this time where there's just every kind of nationality that you could imagine walking down the same street, and cross interracial marriages, and same sex and because love is just love, and we're coming back to now connecting with Christ consciousness and realizing that the second coming of Christ is us.
Yes.
It's not somebody else we're waiting for. And so people are really connected. You can see that now. People are like coming back online, and there's this honeycomb, this grid across the planet that is almost being driven by the darkness and by all of this insidious old paradigm that's kind of collapsing under its own weight. So as much as it's so incredibly terrible, this incredible opportunity is opening up because of it.
It's amazing when you look at a little child, they're not racist. They're not bigoted. They don't care if somebody's more effeminate as a male or more masculine as a female. They don't care, because it's about integrity, and it's this innate, everybody has a right to be. These things are taught.
Yeah.
They're taught to children, unfortunately. But what we are seeing is an utter shift. And this was always going to come, and I think that's why the pandemic was put in at the time that it was. These individuals that think they're running the place and who are rapidly losing their hold, they have prophets, they have people who can see into the future and know what's coming. They've been working on this for a very long time. They completely stuffed it up. The pandemic just woke a lot of people up, sort of going in the opposite direction. Their control structure has failed. So what we're seeing at the moment is, the death throes of that, and the amazing evolution of soul frequency of humanity right now. As people wake up, as they realize what's really going on, they go up a step, and then they go up another step, and then they might decide, I'm not going to work for the man anymore. I'm going to work for myself. I'm not going to get up in the morning dreading a commute to somewhere I can't stand. I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to do what I love. And if everybody did that, wow, what an amazing place we'd be in.
Yeah, and it's coming, and I think that's why like people like you and Elise and I are so important, because we step out and we take those leaps of faith, and we step out there and we're crazily brave enough to just live a life that goes against the grain of everything, and to talk about things and to bring that light through who we're being and what we're doing. And I think people have the opportunity to realize, I can, when I'm ready, I can do that. I can take that leap, or I can do what I love,
People don't realize. So, manifesting's been given this terrible rap, and manifesting is purely when you recognize you're going into a fear part, stepping out of it, recognizing it, have a giggle about it. Don't denigrate yourself if you realize you're falling into fear. Have a bit of a giggle, say, oh, I'm not doing that now. Focus on what you actually want to create. And that's as simple as it is. That's what manifesting is. It's not woo-woo. It's not new age. It's just how people operate, or used to operate, when we weren't stuck constantly in the reptilian part of the brain that is fight and flight. And I've watched people go through this process, and it's just been so incredible to watch as people go, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. And you don't need addictions. You don't need substances when you're happy. You don't need anything to support you into even with shocking trauma. My only addiction now is coffee. I used to drink. I was put on medication at one point, opiates, because I was in chronic pain. No more antidepressants. All of that is gone. I don't need anything. Still got coffee though. It's not perfect. But I'm not digging at people who do use substances, because I know what trauma's like, and I know that sometimes it's just too hard to get through the day. But I am seeing a lot of people letting those things go now, which is it's just amazing. Because again, when you have things that you do to your body that are not healthful for it, and I only have a couple of coffees a day, just so people know, it can break down the aura. So again, that can be something that just keeps your frequency down. You need it as high as possible, especially with what's going on at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And interesting, in part of what I was transcribing from my book was this realization that came through in a medicine journey, and it called it prismatic time reflection.
Wow.
Right. And it showed me this in a vision, but then all I could do was express it in words. But it showed me that what we do with our time, the prismatic time reflection, what we do with our time is based on whether we're in love frequency or whether we're in unresolved trauma, right? And that when we're in unresolved trauma, we go to distraction. When we're in love, we go to inspired action, right? And so once you have that in your awareness field and you start to look and go, am I in distraction? Like, am I scrolling on Facebook? Am I wanting to watch movies or whatever your jam is, right, in that realm of distraction. When that really hit me, it changed everything because, coming back into love and inspired action is where all of your greatness lies.
Yeah.
It's like everybody has so much time. We tell ourselves we don't have time, but the time's been reflect back to us and what we're doing with it from wound space of unresolved trauma most of the time, and we're squandering it.
Yeah.
And so in distraction, you're giving it away. In inspired action, you're creating with it, and you're putting something that has more of a legacy, like, whether it's a book or a program or a business or whatever your inspired action is, it's something positive. Even if it's moving your body and getting into nature, like
Yeah.
that makes a huge difference,
Oh, it does.
So good on you. Coffee's my addiction as well. When you not crazy, but something is nice.
I eat well, I do
I love that. So
fluoridated water. I don't,
yeah,
I'm really careful about what I put in my body apart from the coffee. It's good coffee.
yeah,
It's good.
yeah, which has its place. It does have its place. So yeah, we're not meant to be perfect. We could stay at home in the soul world if we're meant to be perfect. We wouldn't bother coming here. So what kind of industries and jobs, like you said, you love the art, you got the heck out of university, you studied art. What kind of things have you done in your life from for careers, jobs before you got into doing what you're doing now?
Well, after art school, during art school, I was at a local gallery. I actually lived in. It was actually lovely, lovely community, and that was in Meadows, and produced pottery there. And while I was working there, I also worked at the local dog pound, which was absolute joy. I got $8 an hour, sorry, $8.29 or something an hour, and it meant picking up a lot of leavings, but I didn't care. I loved it. I'd be filthy from head to toe when I'd finished because the dogs weren't getting enough socialization, so they'd be all over you, but oh my God, I loved it. That was a big part of my healing. Those dogs healed me. After that,
Yeah.
I've worked in hospitality. I went back into the public service locally, council, for a short period of time. I worked in a factory, which was a nightmare, and I'll never guarantee that, or sort of never recommend that to anybody. And eventually it got to the point where I recognized working in any kind of mainstream area for me with my trauma was not going to work. So then I started my own business, and I've been working for myself exclusively since, for the last 3-4 years. Prior to that, I was working part-time exclusively for myself, as well as for someone who produces a psychic line. So I worked on that for a long time, 8 years. So I've been working through my psychic ability for many, many years. And that's my joy.
Yeah.
It's my passion.
Yeah. Amazing, amazing. So you went full time, what, about 4 years, 2022, right in the heart of all of the crazy
Yeah.
times?
Yeah, purely for myself around that time, 2022, 2023. And that was because, the coursework that I was doing, so I teach psychic development, and the readings that I was doing, I couldn't keep up with the extra job. I had to let it go. So that was that. And, I've worked as a cleaner. I've done pretty much everything that you can do. I mean, there's lots of different jobs that I've done. Worked in a teleservice centre, a social security nightmare, all sorts of things. Worked in the library. Yeah. So, I've tried many different things, but I found myself miserable in all of them, apart from the dog pound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I think that right there, that is the essence of this podcast, is that, like we all have this unique journey, and we do all sorts of things. And lots of times people will look at you up on the stage or look at you on a podcast, look at you and go, I couldn't be like that. And the truth is you can.
Oh, cool.
Actually, you absolutely can. And just highlighting the normality and the ordinary, the paths and extraordinary things that have happened in a very ordinary world sometimes I think it's really huge, because I think everybody has this innate capacity to be a reflection of God and to go into the world and create transformation. We just want them to see it is you too. You can come and join us once you wake up and you connect. Hey, yeah.
And this is one thing, I love about my closest friends have all been through the same sort of thing, MK Ultra, SRA. And we all laugh together about, how we're a sign that their mind control doesn't work. And so, it's very cathartic to know that every time you do an interview, and these are driven people like Max Lowe and Kathy O'Brien, Doug McIntyre, these people are, and some that are very quiet but do amazing work in the background, who,
Yes.
we've all broken out, and that every time we do an interview and every time we connect with somebody, it's proof that other people can heal. And what they're trying to do on a mass scale through learning, through the experiments they did on us, it's not working. And it must drive them crazy.
Yeah. Yep. And thank you, thank you, thank you. I think, we're at this pivotal time in history, and many of us that are here now, we've been through the other great resets, and all sorts of past lives in other times and brutal times. And I feel like it's one of the great blessings we have in this particular time is it is crazy and there's wild things going on out there, but we're actually probably the safest we've been in a long time to express our divine gifts. And you can see this en masse, wow, so many people just stepping into that realm, and it's so exciting. But the witch wound, when you first kind of coming in to do this work, can be quite intense for people, right?
Yeah, it's a really great term. It absolutely is. And the advent of psychology was for a large part to make sure that people with psychic ability were pathologized. They turned into, it was an illness. And I don't have anything against psychology.
Yeah.
Sloan's a psychologist, my best friend. I adore her. I have some beautiful, I refer people to some amazing, amazing therapists that I know. But unfortunately, mainstream psychology thinks that a clairaudient person is schizophrenic. And it doesn't help to just give them drugs. It doesn't shut it off. It just makes them a zombie. And that's one of my greatest frustrations too. We need a science around consciousness. And that was taken away when ether was taken off the board. That there was an understanding of consciousness, and then they said, no, let's take that away. And it's just so incredibly frustrating. That's why I called my business Sixth Science, because it's about bringing back that science of consciousness. And it's a pun on Sixth Sense. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, I like in the reference to six, I've been really woken up in the last probably 2 years, I'd say, to the multidimensional aspects of the flower of life and the numerological aspects beneath that, which a lot of it is hinging on the 6 points, activation energetic points of the flower of life, which then represents in all these different areas, but activating the 6 petal points in whatever area, realm that is in, activates the 7th point, which is the God point, which takes it to multi-dimensional capacity, which is like a level up to whatever that next thing. So to describe it easily, like when I wrote my first book, it showed me the 6 pillars of remembering, right? And these pillars of remembering were how you activated your divine purpose. But I didn't realize until recently the 6 pillars, once activated, went to the 7th God point, which was the divine purpose, which is a level up to the next level of the flower of life, which is activating, bringing that into the world, like living into your divine purpose. So there's these beautiful quantum realms that people don't even know exist, that once we have awareness around them, we can start to realize, wow, there's laws here that we can start to tap into and use our psychic abilities to an activation potential with, to change the game of our DNA, our psychic connection to source, potential timelines. Like, it's wild. It's wild. And this isn't new technology. This is going back to Atlantis. This is going back to Egyptian times. This has always been the game. And it's coming out of suppression because now we're able to connect to the divine stream of consciousness and discern this for ourselves. It's coming through me. It's not coming from externally. And it's a very exciting time, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And just on that, I just want to mention, I did a numerology course with a lovely woman called Georgina Grace, and she explained that the 6 is actually the representation of the pregnant bellied woman. And of course, the Satanists have inverted that and taken it as a 666, taken it from us to try and demonize that number, because their main thing that they do is to try very hard to break the bond between mother and child. So we take it back. That's all we need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are 100% doing that. So major turning points, like in your, obviously, I can hear some of them already in what you've shared from your journey, but what were the major turning points where you really just went, I'm setting a new course here, like I'm done with that, I'm healing now, I'm heading this way, whatever it was?
So in the early 2000s, I started to remember quite a bit, and then I fell pregnant. And my absolute desperation to protect, to mother, meant that I started making allegations officially, divorced myself from my father so that I wouldn't have anything to do with him, and quite a few family members that were still part of the cult. So that process, that started 20 years ago. Along the way, I had chronic fatigue, chronic pain. I slept most of the time, so I needed to heal that as well, and that took a lot of work. At one point, I struggled to walk. I was shaking so much, and that was a manifestation of one of the experiments that was perpetrated on me, and subconsciously it was coming through. So that's a Kuru prion that was perpetrated on me 3 times in childhood. But at one point, around 2011. I made a decision. I was so sick of being in pain. I was so sick of being sick, being medicated. So I threw out all the medication, apart from the antidepressant. You can't go off that too quickly. I learned that the hard way. And I just decided I wasn't going to be in pain anymore. And that sounds crazy for most people, but a lot of these medications for pain actually create a pain cycle. It just keeps it going, and you can't get out of it, especially opiates, because you have a tolerance to them and then they're useless. So once that happened, things really started to work in my favour. I also came to the realisation that I had chosen my parents on a soul level before I came down here. And so I stepped out of victim and into, okay, well, if I did that, why? I don't consider myself particularly stupid. So why would I do that to myself? And then I came to some memories of, amazing spiritual experiences that I had in childhood at my absolute lowest ebb, where I was being guided by one particular beautiful loving spirit guide, which some people might consider my higher self. And that power, that strength of knowing that, okay, I came in for a purpose, that gave me endless strength, endless determination. And then the trolling also, because sometimes when you have, if the information that you have could bring down the government in my state, which it easily could, and again, I have 2 siblings who back up these allegations, and they're very intelligent also. So we've all been assessed, and we're not crazy. We've got multiple assessments proving we're not crazy, and that we're all well above average intelligence. And I don't say that to, blow myself up. But what I'm saying is, if you can't be proven to be crazy, you'll get people trying very hard. The only thing they've really got left now is to try and get us to kill ourselves. That hasn't worked. And people get paid. You get paid operatives that go after you. So that fueled a lot of my determination, because I wanted to prove this particular individual wrong. And, I thank her now. Hi, Claire. Thank you. You've helped me so much. So, you can turn anything around, anything, and turn it to your favour. So if it wasn't for her, I would never have proven everything that I've proven about the tunnels that I was trafficked through, which is undeniable. I mean, all the evidence is out there. So, and that led on to, again, I've been compensated. I was compensated under Victim of Crime compensation scheme by the Crown solicitor after my father died without a conviction, and that just does not happen in South Australia. And I've published the proof, the evidence. I know a barrister who said, how the hell did you do that? So it's because there's so much evidence. So, and again, if she hadn't been, at my throat, trying to get my siblings to take themselves out for so long, because, what she was doing to them annoyed me more than what she was doing to me, I wouldn't be where I am.
Yeah. Yeah, it's transmutation, right? It's like, it's like here we have these incredible challenges, like you're literally under attack, or you're being, you know, chased and chastised, to try and take you down, and you rise up because of it, up out of it, through it. Somehow it strengthens you. And I think it's almost like that's a literal analogy for what's happening kind of worldwide, like why they've got it so wrong with the pandemic and all the things is because, you know, the people are waking up because of it. They're not just falling over and, you know, going to sleep anymore or killing themselves or whatever it is. And so, yeah, just beautiful. I, you know, just want to honor that. That's such a powerful gift to the world and such a beautiful part of your story too. And also to find gratitude there, to put gratitude there. Like that's love timeline. That's like, thank you.
Yeah.
Gratitude naturally occurs on the love timeline. It flows. And just, yeah, I find that beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Whew. So, how did your past experiences guide you to what you are doing now? I think it's fairly obvious, but I want to hear you share that, you know, like how it's all connected.
Well, so with Lay Love Down, the lay movement, where we're encouraging people to get out in nature, it finally occurred to me, because I was involved with these horrific rituals in childhood, and it never made sense to me that they were doing this outside. A lot of them were underground, inside, in tunnels, in bunkers, in cellars, but they would do things outside as well, which made no sense in a big way, big bonfires and things, drumming, chanting, dancing, huge groups of people, like 50 at least on one particular occasion. And it finally occurred to me that they were doing it in nature, outside, where they could be caught, filmed, whatever, because it was really important to be in particular locations. And then I realised it was because it was in the crossing point of ley lines in portal spaces, which are interdimensional. And the unaliving of something innocent in that space, which when that happens, a doorway opens, they would invert it and call something up that was really dark. So that all finally made me realise, because again, I was brought up by a Satanist, a Rosicrucian, and a member of the Golden Dawn sect, and my grandmother, my father's mother, was apparently the head of the Eastern Star, which is the female version of Freemasonry. That understanding made me realise, well, part of my reason for being here is to teach people how important ley lines are. If they're going to do all of that out in nature and risk being caught, good grief, you know, this is so important. So I know that if we do enough going out, we can do it on our own. We can go out and always do it with energetic protection. Don't go out into these spaces if you don't energetically protect yourself. And that can be as simple as a visualization and a prayer or self-affirmation for protection. But if we go out, and there's so many more of us than there are of them, and put love into the ley lines, take beautiful music into the ley lines, take a tuning fork, a singing bowl, a musical instrument, sing into the ley lines. That absolutely takes away everything they're trying to do, because we outnumber 99 to 1. Well, actually, it's way higher than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it really does explain a lot. Like, and I love the machinations of the universe and how it's so much greater than we can really comprehend, how we're a part of something that's just so intricately and beautifully designed. But I know with Elise and I, we were on the road for like 11 months out of 15. We were with a 3-year-old on the road, like didn't know where we were going to stay in 2 or 3 days' time for month after month. It was just full trust. And it really did drop in, because it didn't, logically it made no sense. Why would we do that? Like, we destabilized our life, we destabilized our business, we destabilized, you know, we put ourselves in, you know, turn the old nervous system on. And I do really feel that there was work that we were doing on the grid and on the ley lines that we had no actual conscious understanding of, but that it was being divinely led to where we were meant to be as part of something that was bigger than us, that still to this day we don't fully comprehend.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, I really love what you said there, and I feel like, you know, intuitively we are drawn to places and we're doing things there and we don't even understand what we're truly a part of sometimes. I love that you're so consciously bringing that awareness, which is truly creating in that space. But I feel like, you know, that's the next level as well, you know, like inspiring people to then consciously and a point of awareness go and create this energy. And yeah, that's changing. That's another way to change the world, isn't it? It's a beautiful way to change the world.
Absolutely. And look, it's healing. It's healing for you too. It's healing for your dog if you take them with you. It's healing in so many ways. So we have an aura, which is the soul frequency that doesn't fit within the body. that has a shield. When that breaks down with negative emotions, we need to plug those holes up again. And negative ions are the way that we do that. That's a battery source for us. So going out near big bodies of water, going out in nature where there's mycelium under the ground, mycelium also produces negative ions, which are positively affecting. So it's healthful to go out and do these things. You know, that joke with the gamers, go out and touch grass. Well, yeah, it's really important. You've got to get out and touch grass. We're regaled with negative electromagnetic frequencies that are man-made. And I'm just reading Hayley Wallace's book at the moment. It's fantastic, where she's talking very deeply about, you know, how these can have negative effects. But you can maintain your health by getting out in nature and by using, you know, special devices and things to protect yourself from those negative EMFs. So it's not just you're helping the earth, you're helping yourself when you go out into these spaces. And when you're healthy, you're kind to the people around you, so you're helping your family. And I love that you did that travel, because
Yeah.
your family unit is so incredibly beautiful. And everywhere you went, you would have been spreading your love, which is just gorgeous.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, definitely. I've been getting into nature every day. And when I've found myself in days of contraction, when there's any kind of like physical or mental contraction, which is always just an extrapolation of fear showing up somewhere in the body, nature has been the best cure for that. Like walking the beach, jumping in the ocean, climbing a mountain, like it will shift it faster than anything else other than maybe like a solid breathwork session or plant medicine maybe. But it's, yeah, wow, like people. And I think that's why I'm writing my book I'm writing now about how the cities have been created as vibrational prisons. Like
It's
they're literally pull the heart out of nature, and that's why people struggle to connect with their souls there, because the soul of nature is being torn out. And I feel like that's why so many of us light workers have been moving away from the city, moving back in onto countryside, and it's huge. It's bigger than what people understand.
absolutely. I did research on Adelaide specifically, because obviously that's where, you know, my experiences growing up were. And the city itself is based on a pyramid. You can see it in the landscape, in the streetscape. The capstone is the CBD, and we've got the reptilian eye, which is Victoria Square in the centre, which is the Illuminati pyramid. Now, they say Victoria Square is based on the reptilian eye as a representation of the rainbow serpent, so it's no joke, it's a fact. And there are 6 main ley lines that are controlled that I've been able to map out. And you find that they all radiate out from St Peter's Cathedral in North Adelaide. And that radiating out in that control structure is part of what you're describing. All the towers, all of the 5G towers are all in particular locations as well. But all of these buildings are piezoelectrics, they hold a frequency. And the frequency's drawn in an anti-clockwise direction, which is not helpful. It's supposed to go clockwise. So we have amazing people like yourselves doing the energy work that you're doing. What I'm trying to encourage people to do it with my gorgeous group of volunteers for Lay Love Down. Nobody gets paid with Lay Love Down. Everybody does it voluntarily, and Billy does a spectacular job. And there are others that do amazing jobs as well. Crystal Water Experience, Joe Whitaker and Kelly Heinsohn, they've got their special coded water that you can take out and place around the place of so many people. You know, Pam Gregory does her guided meditations. We have guided meditations. People all over the world are recognizing we need to take this back energetically. It's an energetic war, and we will win this. And I think we're a long way towards winning. Every time I say something like this, though, people will comment, "Oh, where is she living? Because I'm not having a great time." Well, when you put it out there that you feel that you connect with those people that also believe that this is happening, and if you look for it, you can see there's a lot of healing going on. We've got a way to go, but we're well into it. Yeah, I don't think it's going to take
Yeah.
us too long. It's not decades.
No, and I feel like, the light holds such a different frequency. You don't need a huge percentage of the population to live and in that trust point and to bring that love timeline into their, jump timelines essentially, and bring that love timeline in, because there's chaos, and then which is fear, or there's order, which is love, and there's chaos in the order, and there's order in the chaos, and it's where you want to choose to stand from. If you want to live from fear, then you will be in chaos. If you want to live from love, then there's order in all things. And it's happening to you over here in fear, or it's happening for you over here in love. And, like we we're just not over in love all the time. We're not, but I feel like what those of us who are living this work is we're learning how to transcend the fear and transmute it back to love. And then, we get drawn back to it and we're spending less and less time there. Whereas before, when I was young, I spent most of my time there,
Yeah.
in fear. I didn't even know I was there, so I think it's really exciting, and I agree with you. And I'm so heartened to meet people like you and speak to people like you, and to just have these open-hearted conversations where, this other level of truth comes online, and people, once they reach that vibration, once they do that healing work, and they start moving towards, opening their hearts to the truth that was always right before them, it's going to just keep swelling in numbers.
Absolutely is, yeah. So, and I want people to just remind themselves of that. Be optimistic. And look, if you live in the city and you're a high frequency soul, you're holding a node point. You're doing great work. So keeping that frequency up, just exit the cities and leave the cities to those who aren't awake. That is some of the hardest work a person can do, and I take my hat off to those people. I left the city when I was 23. Went back for a brief stint for 6 months and left again. Yeah, and I could never live in Adelaide again. But I take my hat off to people who are holding a high frequency and doing the very, very best that they can to help. So as long as they know that, if they get out and they pop their bum on the ground, just a bit of soil, get that grounding, bring the frequency up, lots of music, lots of things that make you feel good, you're going to be making a big difference to the people around you. It's a true form of altruism.
Yeah, agreed. So, standing right here, right now, looking forward into Rachel Vaughan's future, what are you feeling? What are you seeing? You have any future visions or anything that you are moving towards, or you feel that we're all moving towards, that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I'm absolutely delighting in, traveling and going to these beautiful, like I've got CCC. I'm assuming you're going to Tasmania in November for the 11/11. That'll be amazing. I've got Hidden Valley retreats in April. I'm speaking at Tartaria event in Adelaide in May. There's all these living free festivals. There's all these beautiful things that I'm so excited to be involved with. That is my absolute joy. I was agoraphobic for quite some time, so stepping out to Uluru was my first holiday in 14 years. And so I broke a mold. I went to America in September, my first overseas trip. So that's what I'm absolutely relishing at the moment, instead of being in that fear state. What I'm seeing, I really think that governments will fall, but I am also seeing that there will be people who will step up. We're not going to be, in a terrible fear state. It's going to be a transition. It's going to be a change. People do not trust politicians anymore. They don't want to be governed. So people aren't voting. Those sorts of things are happening because they don't want to give consent. And I don't, I don't. People want to vote, go for it. I'm not judging. But there's different ways of looking at things. So I think we're going to come into, over the next 3-4 years, the chaos, but out of that comes something way better, way better. And I think eventually it'll get to the point where people are so switched on psychically, which is just happening organically anyway, whether they're trying to do it or not, it's just happening. It's part of this frequency upgrade, that they'll be able to see, if they look at somebody who's very dark or has attachments or is being puppeted in some way, they'll be able to see it. It'll be that obvious. So those people won't be in power anymore. And I think that's what they're terrified of. I think that's why everything's, in the pandemic was organised to try and bring in these 15-minute cities and stuff. It's not working. It's not working. What we're seeing now is these pathetic attempts to keep that whole structure going, but it's disintegrating. So it's going to be, I'm not saying it's all going to be perfectly easy, but it's certainly going to be a lot more positive than, the mainstream media is trying to tell us, and just, I think it's very obvious people are moving away. You look at a YouTube channel of a mainstream media, like Channel 7, Channel 9 now, their views are tiny. It's pathetic. And they have to turn all the comments off because people, I used to love reading the comments. It was so entertaining. Damn, they took it away. But you can see that those people that people do trust, they get the views now. People are voting with their minds and with their where they're putting their attention, and that is just such a joy to me. That makes everything worthwhile to see the shift.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And I think now it's a lot easier too. Like, now that we have such a deeper understanding of what's playing out, if people are speaking in the creation of fear, that's just your first giveaway. What's this founded in? Is it love or is it fear? Okay, if it's fear, just turn it off. Just walk away. You know what I mean? It's like, just don't give it any attention. It's like, and I think that's what's so beautiful about nature, right? When you go into nature, you see order, you see love, you see everything working together. You see this incredible like existence of all of these species like just happening together. And if you never turned on a TV or a phone or anything else, there would be no problems in the world. And so it's really coming back to the truth, which is chaos is created. And most of the time, you don't even know if any of that's real anyway.
Exactly.
But what is real? What is real is what you can feel, what you can see, what you have, and what you know, and where you are. Live there. Spend more time living there.
Exactly.
There's love there.
When has it ever helped you to know what
Amazing.
other country on the other side of the world, which only the propaganda agents know if it's true or not? It doesn't help anything. And doesn't mean that you turn away from it. It's just to be discerning.
Yeah.
Don't use
Yeah. People say all the time, "Oh, have you heard about this?" No, I haven't heard about that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't tell me. I'm okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Don't need to know. What would you say? What would you say to people who have been through incredibly horrible life situations and are finding their way to a new paradigm? What advice would you give to them?
Well, almost everything in the physical body can heal, and you can heal from
Mm.
the most horrific trauma. I know Holocaust victims, that have managed to heal and are still being effective and doing things in their 80s. Amazing people. So we can you can go through the most horrific things, but you can pull yourself out of it. And it's really, I don't want to say that people who are in trauma and can't get out of it are choosing not to do it. I'm saying that some of us can choose to step out of it. And like I said before, one of my greatest lessons I taught myself, I chose this lifetime for a reason, took me out of victim mode. And it's just too easy to stay in victim mode. It certainly wasn't helping me. I wasn't getting anywhere. Substance abuse and all sorts of things. But then there's no excuses. Substance abuse, there's always an excuse. Oh, it's this, it's that. And I'm not picking on people. I'm just saying you can pull yourself out of it. I've been there.
Yep. Yep. I've been there too. And there is another way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love that. I 100% agree. We can, and I feel like it's almost that foundation of pain and suffering is a rite of passage to creating the equal and opposite of that, because we are a reflection of God. We live in a dualistic realm. Let's take advantage of that. You've been led so far away from the light. How about we go that far again towards the light and see what we do in the world? Why? Because we can. I'm doing that. You're doing that.
Lived experience. It's impossible to have the same level of compassion and empathy if you haven't had that lived experience. And I know some beautiful young people who are trauma therapists and they haven't had that experience and they're really effective. But the greatest healers that I know have been through everything. And it's really sucks that we're in a planet of duality where you learn more from trauma than your pleasant experiences. I think that's shifting too. I'm working
Yes.
towards a world where trauma just doesn't happen. Not at the sort of level that we're going through at the moment. And we're all trauma bonded through the pandemic. That's a fact. They were trying to divide us all, they brought us all together. So, I think everybody wants towards a world where children are not being abused and don't have to go through this sort of trauma. That's what I'm working for. You're working for. And I know that's what the most of people want that. Most people are good people. That's what they want. It's got a very tiny percentage that are so traumatized from their own abuse that they've become predators and perpetrators. And they're acting out like
Yeah.
like traumatized toddlers, sorry. Most
I agree.
horrible. Only a traumatized
Yeah.
toddlers.
Traumatized.
Called. Don't want to give him a bad rap.
I know what you mean. Oh dear. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing, pertinent parts of your story and opening up with me and with all the people who are listening. And what a huge transformation, right? What you just shared before about like not even traveling or going anywhere for like 14 years. That's a huge breakthrough in its own right. I think we kind of skipped past that, like didn't even like really let that drop in, what it must have taken for you to step out there and let those constraints go and just go, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, it's a step-by-step process.
Free of fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just amazing. I just really want to honor all of the sides and all of the angles of your journey, and honor the horrific elements of it, and honor the love that you've turned that into, honor your dedication to the truth and not shying away from bringing that into the light, even when the system and people and would try and shut you down time and time again. And I just, really want to honor the divine purpose that you're stepping and walking with. Congratulations. Such a beautiful gift to the world, and keep doing what you're doing. It's making a huge difference.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you for what you're doing, because I know you're also making a huge difference, and it's not easy to step up and do this sort of work. So bless you for all of that.
Thank you, sister. And yes, we are planning on being in Cradle Mountain for 11/11, but with 2 kids and one being very young, who knows what happens? We're just divine trust. So
Oh,
if not, we'll hopefully see you at Living Free. If not, who knows where else we'll see
yeah,
you.
cool. Right.
And we'll get Billy to put all of your links and all of the beautiful things that you do in, so that people can connect with you, find you, if they want to work with you or learn from you or watch your podcast and all the beautiful things you do. So thank you again, sister. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Well, here's our little Marvel moment right at the end. If you've gotten this far, if you've watched through all of the intros and the speaking and the outros, well, this is our little Marvel moment. And this is who we're going to be having next week. So if you miss that, who knows what might not shift in your reality.